Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at Riderflex. We hope you enjoy today's podcast. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the Riderflex show for updates on new episodes. And by the way, if you haven't already, check out the book we recently launched, The Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring, available for purchase on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Alex Sidorenko on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Steve, and hi, everyone listening.
So you're in Spain. I looked at your LinkedIn profile. It says Switzerland. But you live in Spain now?
Yes, I've worked in Switzerland, but now I live in Spain.
Okay, whereabouts?
I live in a little coastal village in between Barcelona and France. It's an area called Costa Brava. And it's a very nice change from some of the huge multi-million cities that I used to live in. And we thought, well, we kind of want to semi-retire and just live in a village on the coast and enjoy life. And we've been, while I'm kind of, I work and travel a lot. We've been living here for 7 years, and to this day, every day we send kids to school, we go for a walk on the beach just before I go into the office. And it's still like it just doesn't get boring. It's still such an amazing feeling.
That's nice. How's the weather? Is it mild year round, or what's the weather like?
It has been a really warm winter. It's kind of today is the second day of miserable rain, but other than that, it was really nice. Like, I mean, I put on the jacket maybe 5 times.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. All right, very nice. All right, what are the summers like? Are the summers super hot, or they're okay too?
Reasonable, yeah. High
Wow.
20s, early 30s in Celsius.
Okay, very good. So this is your wife, your partner, or what? Yeah, tell me about your family.
Yeah, it's wife and 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. Son was already born in Spain, so yeah, they're loving it.
Okay, that's great. What's your wife do? Or does she work with you, or does she take care of the kids, or what's she do?
She takes care of the kids, and whenever they're in school, she does a lot of online marketing, and now she's into bodybuilding,
Oh.
and she has been in for a few years, and yeah, she's preparing for a competition, so it's like it's full on. We just arranged with the local butcher to buy meat in bulk because she needs like kilos and kilos and kilos of protein every day, and we consume unbelievable amount.
So how did your wife, like the bodybuilder, how did she get into that? Is that something when she was young, or where'd that come from?
I don't know. I think she was always kind of fascinated with the beauty of a strong female body, and she really kind of wanted it. And as soon as she um, kind of got back into shape after the second child, she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go all the way. Not just be good looking and fit. I'm gonna go all the way and become like a champion in Spain." And
Wow.
yeah, no, she's been going at it for the last couple of years, and yeah, it's kind of fascinating stuff.
Now, does that put pressure on you for your diet and your workout and all other stuff? If you want to eat like pizza and drink beer and all that, are you like, do you feel the stress around that? Is there pressure for you?
Oh well, it's more than pressure. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had beer.
Oh man, yeah, because
No,
she.
no, it's full on shaming for any unhealthy behavior I do. And I think the last word she said to me was, "If you're gonna do it, make sure I don't see it."
Yeah, because she's like eating meat and veggies or whatever, right? And you're like,
It's super healthy, super balanced. Like there's a full menu, and literally like whenever we go anywhere traveling, she takes little kitchen weights with us. So she measures the grams of meat and vegetables. It's like 150 grams, 300 grams, and no more, no less.
Wow. What about the kids? Do the kids get to eat cake and ice cream, or they're she strict on them
Yeah,
too?
no, no, kids are easy.
Okay. Oh man, yeah, that would be a lot of pressure. I know if me and my wife, if one of us is eating differently than the other one, it's harder to manage, right? It's just harder to manage, you know. So wow, okay, interesting. And you've been married for how long?
13 years now.
Okay. And how'd you meet her? At a weightlifting contest? No, I'm just playing. How'd you meet her?
Oh, that's actually that's a really nice story. I was flying to Germany to see my grandmother for her birthday,
Okay.
and she was flying to somewhere else in Europe, but she had a stopover in Germany, and we were literally sitting. She was at the window seat, and I was at the aisle seat, and there was nobody in the middle, even though the plane was kind of almost full.
Okay.
And she's really good looking, and so there's this there's this dream that every single guy on the planet has to be sitting to a very good looking girl on the plane and start talking. And and it was kind of scary to start the conversation. And I see in the kind of in the side of my eye, I see that she begins to put in her headphones in. And I'm going like, oh my God, I have to stop it because if she does, like, there's no way I can interrupt her afterwards. And I remember saying something so stupid. I remember saying something like, you can't use electronics until after takeoff, until after the seatbelt sign has been switched off. And she goes like, "Oh my God, what an idiot!" And we never stopped talking for the
Uh,
full duration of, I don't know, 2 or 3 hour flight.
wow.
And
That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
been together ever since.
You know, if you hadn't, you know, that story ties to so many other things in life, right? If you turn left, turn right, you go through a doorway, this, that, a relationship. I mean, one little decision to make a left or a right can change things. If you had not said something before she put her headphones on, that may have never have happened, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it really kind of really supports the overall. I guess my kind of my motto in life. Never know where something good or bad will happen. It's just it's random. And then the second thing that risk management teaches us is that not be scared of the randomness, but appreciate the randomness and kind of be prepared for the randomness. And whenever something, your life throws something at you, because you appreciate that it could have happened by a complete chance, by a complete coincidence, and it may never happen again, you grab the opportunity and you go with it. Um, Also realizing in your mind that the upside could potentially be huge, but the downside, I mean, the downside is insignificant. So it's a no-brainer. Whenever you have a choice to do something or not do something, the risk brain inside of me tells me, well, what's the downside? What's the upside? And if one overweights the other, then it's a no-brainer. You kind of course, you're gonna try and do and test and go to a new place or try a new thing. If the downside is not that big, then you jump on the opportunity, you jump on the randomness and
Mhm.
benefit from the randomness. So I think that was kind of one of those examples.
Yep, agreed. I totally agree. Tell me about your early life. Alex, tell me about your family, as far as your mom and dad, siblings. You know, a lot of times, who you end up being professionally is shaped by that in different ways. And so I always kind of like to get the early life history, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, I don't know how connected it is. My both parents were from Soviet Union and they were both engineers, which I think was kind of the go-to profession for young people at the time. And my dad, I think, quite quickly realized the risks associated with living in Soviet Union, and he immigrated to Switzerland when I was very little, and then
Uh,
and then later after Switzerland, he immigrated to Australia, where I joined them. And my my early life was normal schools. I did do a lot of kind of state and national competitions in like biology, chemistry,
ah,
math. geography, and I didn't think I was genius. Like I was pretty good at the local level, at the kind of at the city or suburb level, but I think I was demolished at the state and federal level. And so I wasn't the genius, and I think that came from the mother's side. I was inclined to studying, but because my dad is like this, gold star medalist in education, PhD in chemical engineering,
Ooh, okay.
and my mom is kind of more into kind of sales communication and talking a lot and very quickly and kind of laughing and joking a lot. So I think I kind of got the easygoing conversation from her and
Yep.
studying from my dad, but I probably got more easygoing conversations. So I was good enough to be one of the best in the class, and I later became the student of the year a couple of years in a row in the university in Australia,
Good.
and and kind of it continued last year. I was named the best risk manager in Europe, but the kind of this always the outgoing, easy conversation, being able to find common ground with people and communicate. I think that kind of came from my mom, but my dad, I mean, helped really a lot because when I was finishing school in Australia, just like most students, I guess, I really had no idea what I wanted to do,
Mm,
nor that I particularly cared. I already kind of I got good marks because I was the best student. Oh, no, that was before I got into the university. I was one of the best students at school, and I got good marks. I think I was like top three student in the
okay.
graduation for the school, and so I was looking for a university degree. It was pretty clear that I was going to go to one of the best universities in Australia, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my dad was at the time doing his PhD in chemical engineering at one of
Mm,
the best universities in Melbourne. And he's like, "Oh, he probably felt that I had no idea, so he researched it for me, and he went and go like, they've got this new degree called risk management. It's literally the first year ever for a university in Australia to have an undergraduate degree in risk management." To which I said, "Sure, why not?" And in Australia, the system is that you can choose up to like 10 courses, 10
okay.
degrees,
Okay.
and you basically put the more difficult ones at the top, and it kind of goes, if you can you get into the first one? Do you have enough marks to get into the first one? If not, the second, if not
I
the third,
see.
if not
I
the fourth.
see.
And so
Okay.
risk management was number four for
Mm,
me.
mm,
And the first three were very aspirational, but quite boring. I think they were like corporate finance or accounting or something, and I didn't get into those courses, and so I got into my fourth choice, risk management, which is hilarious because it turned out to be quite a successful and fruitful career in that. But I think even more fun, the university cancelled that degree few years after we graduated. We were the first ever, so me and like 30 other people, we were the first ever graduates in undergraduate bachelor degree in risk management in Australia,
interesting.
and uh, probably in the world, because back in the day that wasn't really a thing. And they canceled the degree soon after because risk management kind of is not really a profession. It's a competency that any professional, like any startup founder, better have some risk management competencies. Any finance, any tax professional should have some risk management competencies, which are not common sense at all. And in
Mm,
fact, most of the risk management competencies are go against the human nature. Like the evolution created us to ignore risk,
that's
uh,
true.
un-
Yeah, good point.
unless it's kind of a life or death matter. And even in a life or death matter, most humans kind of are. We're just lucky that the nature doesn't test us, because most humans would fail the test miserably. And yeah, so I was basically a guinea pig in a failed experiment
I
when it
was
comes to.
um I was surprised actually when I looked at your profile and was studying for the podcast, the fact that you majored or it was in risk management and got your bachelor's in risk management. That did surprise me. And in fact, I thought what you said, which was, I was like, man, I didn't even know that was a degree. So, yeah,
It
very,
isn't. It
yeah.
isn't. We were the guinea pigs in a failed experiment.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, but hey, it's obviously it's served you well. By the way, no siblings?
I have two stepbrothers and
Okay.
one stepsister. Yeah.
Oh,
Lots.
mom and dad didn't stay together. So,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. All right. Why, by the way, why'd you go back to Switzerland from Australia? Or did the job take you up there? Just curious.
Well, Switzerland was like the number 10 on the destination list. From Australia, I went to Russia for a bit, then to Spain, then to Switzerland, then to Russia again. Then the war in Europe started, and I wanted to cut
Uh,
ties with Russia,
I see.
and so now I'm back in Spain. So because it was, I was all over the place, and I spent months and months in Middle East as well
Ah,
in that time period.
well, that speaks highly then of the little village you live in Spain, right? Because you've been all over the world, so that must be a pretty special place.
Y- I think so. And I hope nobody on the podcast hears that because we have way too many tourists, and
You don't want any more.
we
Please
don't we
don't.
don't want. Yeah, exactly. We don't
Uh,
want any more visitors. But yeah, I've lived in a lot of places, and the little village in Spain and the little village in Switzerland, where I lived and worked, these two places kind of just really stand out as something unbelievable.
Very good. How many languages do you speak?
Well, two and a half. I yeah, I'm embarrassing that I'm still learning Spanish and I don't really speak fluently.
Okay, but you speak Russian.
I do speak Russian, yeah.
Okay, yeah, very good. Okay, I was curious. All right, so you had a great career in risk management. We don't have to go over all of those stops because I don't want to run out of time. But basically, you had a really good career, moving along, moving up, different jobs, moved to a few different places. When did you? I would like to kind of start with when did you decide to jump into, being an entrepreneur and kind of starting your own stuff? How did that transition happen?
Well, I mean that actually that happened probably like 15 years ago.
Okay.
And the major motivator for that was I remember um, I started my career in risk in kind of global international consulting houses.
Hmm.
And
You work for
in fact,
Deloitte, right? You work for Deloitte. Yeah,
so I started with Deloitte and then I joined
yeah,
PwC.
yeah.
And in PwC, I was one of the co-authors of like the global PwC risk methodology. And I was going around Europe training other PwC offices on how to sell risk management to clients.
Mm,
And then I was headhunted away from PwC into a government venture capital fund. And so it was basically a government fund responsible for giving out grants to small and medium-sized startups. And I was the risk manager there, but I think the most important learning lesson for me was I wrote essentially a book on what good risk management looks like when I was working at PwC, or so I thought. And then I started implementing everything that I wrote. I started implementing by the book at this venture capital fund. And what I realized that none of the things that I believed for many years in my career to be best practice made any practical sense whatsoever.
mm,
And
interesting.
so
All right.
I had this realization come to me that, oh my God, consulting houses, we've been selling, basically window dressing
Ah,
and horoscopes
ah,
as opposed to kind of practical and simple pragmatic things. And so that really hit me hard because at some stage I had a change in boss and the boss brought in his own team
okay.
and I was on the way out and I
Mm,
was but he said like I said I don't think I deserve to be out and he said well build a business case
mm,
and see if you can justify you not being out. And I
okay.
started building a business case, and I spent a lot of I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort. They were actually quite nice, giving me a lot of time
Mm,
to put something together.
mm,
And at that time, I believed that what we did at PwC was best practice. And so I built this business case around that version of best practice.
Okay.
And what I realized, I couldn't sell it to anyone in the organization. Not because I wasn't a good seller, but because the actual underlying ideas of what we thought was best practice wasn't best practice at all. It was basically just horoscopes.
Mm.
And the executives at the time were actually much smarter than I was because they immediately saw through that. And they just went like, it's just, we don't need that. Like it makes no sense. And so I was fired eventually, a few months after from the company, and one of my kind of immediate responses was, and I think the wife was pregnant with the first child at the time, so it was quite
Yeah.
inconvenient. It was quite inconvenient at the time, and I thought to myself, well, I better make some money quick, and I immediately moved into entrepreneurship. I created um, a lot of different training programs that I used for training in different business schools and universities.
Okay.
And I created a Risk Academy blog or portal, which actually since then became the biggest risk website in the kind of Russian-speaking world. So,
Okay.
180 or something million people around the world that speak Russian. That's the main go-to risk management website
Nice.
to this day. And so my jump into entrepreneurship was out of necessity. But then kind of soon after that, I found a job at another private equity fund, and I became the head of risk there and kind of continued my career. But that was the
I see.
most important learning point, because once I failed once in that version of risk management, I since then started calling it risk management one. Basically, window dressing, facade, horoscopes, nothing to do with the actual underlying science of taking risks. Um, the next job I got and the blog and everything I've done ever since was about something completely different, a completely different risk management. I call it risk management 2.
Okay.
Something that is based on, by the way, not something that I was taught at university. It actually turns out to be that they were right at closing the program, because what I was taught at university back in the day was actually really, really bad. It was the same version of best practice that actually doesn't work, and it never worked, and it never meant to work. It was just somebody's kind of view of what risk management should look like. And ever since then, I've never done any of the things that I once believed to be best practice, and that proven to be very, very successful. So it was an important turning point. It felt bad and I felt sad, but it created the foundation, the platform for this amazing career ever
No doubt
since.
about it. I mean, so many pivot points right in there and things that happened to you that shaped where you're at now. Wow, my co-founder at Riderflex, he always says everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason, which some people think is, corny or whatever, but wow, I mean, just think about the things that happened to you and how they turned you in certain directions. How about that? Excellent. So that's where the entrepreneurship came from. And by the way, for the listeners, we're recording this on February 7th, 2023. Seems like every time I open up LinkedIn, I see some other news about some big company laying people off. Hey, if you get laid off and you wanted to start something on your own, it's a perfect opportunity, right, Alex? I mean, you proved it right there. You started something back then, and then you took a regular job again, which is always interesting. Anytime somebody tries entrepreneurship for a while and then they jump back into being a quote employee, that sometimes is hard for people emotionally, because they were doing their own thing for a while, kind of their own boss, and then all of a sudden,
I've been doing it ever since, and
okay,
most of my I think every one of my recent employees hired me exactly because I had this kind of consulting, training, education business. Because my product is knowledge and models and kind of application of that knowledge to some sort of problem solving. Because my product is not a web interface or a physical product, because my product is kind of the competency of what I can offer and the advice
right,
that I can give for now. I mean, I wish it wouldn't because I'm really tired of talking and giving advice. But for now, my product is that I found quite quickly that I need to keep the knowledge and the ideas current, and I can only talk with authority about something that I physically done, because this was the biggest learning point at the first venture capital fund. I knew the theory, but once I started implementing the theory, I very quickly realized that it's actually the world is very different. Like none of it made sense, and the theories just didn't hold up. And so now I, on purpose, every 2 or 3 years, I go back to full employment in different parts of the world to
Interesting.
make sure I actually do something new, and then I can kind of turn it into a product for consulting purposes. So for example, last year I was named the best risk manager in Europe for the work we did on applying quantitative risk analysis to insurance buying, and we saved the shareholder $13 million in a single year,
Nice.
which was for the insurance costs. That was huge because we reduced the cost of insurance by like 40%. So almost halved what he was paying for insurance, while actually significantly improving the quality of coverage. So he got a much, much better product and started paying half. Imagine if you suddenly got a much better car and it costs you half the price of your current car. And so I always kind of try and go back to full employment at certain periods to make sure I haven't forgotten, and I can try, and then I have like another 5 years of speaking with authority about something, because every time I actually try something, I discover that it's not what it seems. It's actually
Interesting. Now that would scare me if I was an employer, because then I would think, well, Alex is only going to be here for 3 years. Or do you tell them that ahead of time?
Well, so the last company, which is like a $10 billion global corporation, one of the biggest in the industry, they hired me. In fact, I was for the first 6 months, I was working as a contractor, because they hired me. It took ages to do a Swiss job visa, and I was working as a consultant while kind of performing my normal kind of in-house duties. And no, I'm pretty transparent about
Okay.
that.
Okay.
It's I don't really have a time frame on like how long I will stick with the company. For the last company was 3 years,
Oh.
and it would have been much longer because we were on the verge of something amazing. But then the war started, and it just killed all of the initiatives, because when when you're in the middle of the war and there are sanctions everywhere around, you're not really doing innovative stuff. You're surviving, and that's a completely different skill set and a completely different application of your methodologies. Like you're no longer trying to do the best you can possibly be. You just kind of we'll take anything. We just need to survive. It was it wasn't really as fun
Yep.
as it was. But if it wasn't for the war, I would have stayed at the company for much, much longer, because we were doing some absolutely amazing things, like groundbreaking stuff for the narrow profession of risk management. It's more the other way around. Like I can stay in a role for as long as necessary, but in between the roles, for whatever the reason, like whatever the reason I leave, and it's for some reason it's always put in one way or another, because I left the previous company because the other war started in Europe, and now this company because another war started, it's more kind of the other way around. I cannot stay a consultant for too long because I feel I would lose touch with reality.
Yep.
And I try and go back into the kind of hands-on to see, well, how does it actually work? When I bring this concept, because with risk management, and this is a fascinating story for entrepreneurs as well, many of the things we do in risk management goes against human nature. So you come to a head of finance or head of strategy or a shareholder or an executive or a CEO, and you say, well, why don't we apply some risk analysis to this decision you're about to sign? And you would be amazed how your decision will change once you add kind of a layer of risk on top of it, because basically we ignore risk most of the time, and most of the people don't believe you. There's a lot of pushback. So getting that pushback, because I come to an organization and I say, I can save a couple of millions of dollars on your insurance program with my eyes closed. It is like literally the easiest thing I can do in a single day. And people just don't believe that. Like they just cannot comprehend the power of quantitative risk analysis. And getting that pushback is very important because you say, well, okay, well, how do I build a business case? How do I justify? How do I sell this internally? Because I know it's going to make a huge difference, a positive difference, but how do I kind of sell it and how do I make it stick? Because this is another thing, like we would build a template or a calculator for the environmental team and they would quantify all the risks. So we would build a calculator for the compliance team and they would quantify all the compliance risks. And then literally the next day we walk out of the room, they drop the ball. It's like nothing ever happened. We present to the board, the shareholder is happy. They go, thank you, you saved us. This was the best thing we've done.
then,
We loved it.
yeah.
Literally, you walk out of the door, they drop the ball.
Because
They're like,
you're not the executor of the plan. You're just delivering the plan. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then somebody else has to execute, and
Yep.
they don't have the competencies or the passion that you have about risk, and so they just drop the ball immediately.
You need to start a side consulting firm that does the execution. You need to say, hey, look, I can sell the risk analysis, and oh, by the way, if you don't want to execute it, I have that too.
Yeah, exactly. And figuring all of that out kind of requires you to be close on the ground from time.
What does the your risk analysis apply to? Is it just insurance? Is it the environment? Is it budgets? Is it spent? Yeah. What all is it tied to, if you don't mind?
I have been applying it to any type of significant business decision.
Okay.
Whether the business plan is risky or not risky enough, whether this investment is worth 100 million or it's actually worth less, whether this project can be finished in 6 months or it can be finished in 9 months.
Interesting.
Whether this insurance policy is a good policy or not, whether we spend too much time and when we accredit and work and select best vendors or suppliers for our contracts, whether we need water purification plant for this water pollution issue, or we need water purification plant plus something else. Whether it makes more sense to transfer dangerous chemicals via rail or via trucks. Like anything you can think of, any decision that has some uncertainty associated with that. So any decision about the future that is significant, that has some uncertainty associated with that, I can do risk analysis for that. The only reason I kind of
that would mean you have to be an expert at almost every function or every department. I mean, you almost have to be an operations expert, a sales expert, a marketing expert, a human resources expert, an insurance expert, a legal expert. I mean, you almost have to be an expert on every single facet of the business.
Well, I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've just when I listed the examples, it sounds like a lot, but I've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah.
But in reality, you're absolutely right. You do it one at a time. You do it one after another. So, for example, we were figuring out how to reduce water pollution and how to quantify risks for water pollution. And we spent a couple of months really deep diving into the problem together with the whole environmental team. I mean, it's not the risk manager who is a superhero who comes in and saves the day. It's me providing the mathematical capabilities and the modeling capabilities to the environmental team, who are the true experts, and me kind of trying to ask them the right questions, trying to build the decision tree or the influence diagram to then model the risks, to quantify the risk exposure. And then, insurance is the next one. We spend, 3 months on one type of insurance, then another 6 months on the second type of insurance. And it builds up this portfolio, and then procurement is the current kind of main project. And
okay.
This was the last project that I did before I left, and my team who left and continued doing, this is what they continue to work on, and they progressed quite significantly into finding applications of quantitative risk analysis for specifically the procurement purposes. Every single time it's working together with the actual owners of the risk, with the teams.
do the leaders or the owners of that particular project or risk, do they see you as the no guy, or do they see you as the, oh my gosh, Alex is gonna present the risks, and then the CEO and the board are gonna be like, that's too risky, never mind, let's not do it? Do they fear you as somebody that's always gonna shut down something?
No, no, it's quite the opposite.
Okay,
The only reason, for example, the only reason why we started with environmental and, for example, like not safety,
right.
is because the environmental team invited us.
I see.
And the only reason why we started with procurement is because we had a conversation. Well, I had a conversation with the head of procurement saying, well, what's your performance measured? How is your bonus paid? And she said, well, my target is saving the cost of procurement. And I'm saying, but that's very risky because you can buy cheaper stuff, but then the quality will deteriorate and the delays will be bigger.
Mm.
And so there needs to be a balance between kind of
Mhm.
this risk and the
Mhm.
cost.
Mm,
And she said, "Oh my God, this is going to save me because
I
I am
see.
also quite alarmed
Mm,
about just saving for the sake of saving and actually increasing our risk exposure because again, it's
mm.
a double-edged sword."
Good.
And so um, every single project that we did was because somebody invited us to do that,
Okay.
or
All right.
or the shareholder ordered us to work together to solve the problem that he was
Interesting.
unhappy about.
Do you work as a solo consultant now, or do you have a team if a company calls you? Do you have contractors that you use? How do you set it up? If you got a call tomorrow that says, hey, I need you to come to Australia for 3 months and do a risk analysis, do you take people with you, or how does that work?
Um, so first, kind of the first decision to make is this a type of decision or a type of risk analysis that is interesting to do? And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen, I just kind of I usually reference to books that already found the answers to that. And because I have my YouTube channel with 10,000 subscribers and I think 900 videos, I have answers to kind of most risk management questions out there. And specifically for that purpose, I also created this annual conference I call Risk Awareness Week, where every year about 5,000 participants from like 120 countries watch 60 different workshops, and they cover all multitude of topics. So most of the time I refer people to existing resources and saying, well, you can find the answer here. You don't actually need
Yeah, but how do you get
uh,
paid? How do you get paid on that? How do you make money?
yeah, that's the thing. I get I make a little bit of money from the ticket sales on the Risk Awareness Week,
I
even though
see.
it has free access, and there's an option to upgrade to get CPD certificates and kind of access
Oh,
to all
I
the
see. I see.
workshops.
Now the name makes it sound like it's once a week every year, but it's gone way beyond that now, right? It's an online platform.
So yeah, well, I'll come back to the Risk Awareness Week
Okay.
because I haven't
Okay.
really
Okay.
answered your question. So first, I decide if it's an interesting exercise to do, and if it is, then I usually do fly out. And in fact, I spend quite a lot of time in the Middle East, and I'm actually going to Australia next week.
Mm,
And I usually fly out. I'm the face of the operation. But over the years, I do have a team. Like I literally have a team of corporate finance specialists, mathematicians,
great. Okay.
and
Yeah.
like procurement specialists, logistical specialists who do the actual handwork, the tough modeling, the mathematical models.
Mm,
And yeah, we do this as a team, and I really
okay.
act as
Ah,
the liaison with the client. And I myself use my team and some other people, other speakers from the Risk Awareness Week in my life. For example, I have a model for life decisions. Like I have a mathematical model that models whether I will lose a job or not lose a job, whether I will get sick. And I built it. Well, I got a friend, one of the speakers at the Risk Awareness Week, Graham Keith, who's like a PhD in I think Cambridge, PhD in mathematics in Cambridge. He built a model because I needed to support a decision. Should I buy a house or rent a house? And should I sell my apartment when I buy a house, or should I keep my apartment and buy a house anyway? And these are tough decisions that are beyond human intuition.
Mm.
You cannot process those complex decisions in your head. So I literally had a model built for that, to calculate, what would be the most beneficial outcome for the family over the 30 years, given different choices. And it was a fascinating exercise.
Okay, now this sounds wonderful when you say life decisions, that you have an analysis for that. How do you manage the emotional aspect of it? Because I'm just sitting here envisioning, if I tried to set my wife down and say, "Hey, we're going to go through this calculation on a decision," my wife would just be like, she would have, I mean, she's about the emotional piece and what feels good to her. She don't give a shit about the numbers. You know what I mean? How do I do that?
So I had a Monte Carlo model for my wedding, where I modeled the budget and the
Okay.
kind of even the presents that I was expecting for
Are you
the
serious? Oh my
for the
gosh.
wedding. Yes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so the wife knew this was going to happen even before we got married. And I think this was a smart decision because I had a reserve. Basically, the whole idea of budgeting and modeling is that you have a reserve which is untouchable. And every single day, she tried to spend the reserve every single day, and she was not allowed to touch it. And so I think she kind of got accustomed that risk analysis is part of our life. Like I'm not kidding. I make her to write decision trees for where to celebrate daughter's birthday, or for like all the different things she calls me. Like she calls me and says like, "Oh, what should I do? There's that and that. Like, should I go for example, should I go for the competition in spring, or should I go for the competition in autumn?" I'm going, I have no idea. Build a tree and see you apply the risk analysis techniques to your decision and see what that tells you. And sometimes she tells me to get lost, and sometimes she does it. And usually on most important decisions, she does it. But I think the kind of the buy or not buy a house is a good example.
Yeah.
Because when we modeled that, the conclusion was that it actually doesn't matter. The difference, and this is a very important decision, the kind of outcome of risk analysis. Sometimes you do the risk analysis and you very clearly see that something is a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's bad idea on all circumstances, you discount it immediately. But most of the time, when you balance the risks of one scenario and the risks of another scenario, because buying is risky, not buying is also risky, because you have to then invest, and the volatility of the stock market is no less, it's actually more. And so both options are risky. But once you kind of model and you realize that in the big scheme of things, for me specifically, for the assumptions that I've made and the kind of the inputs that I had for my life, it didn't matter. And once you realize it doesn't matter financially, the difference was like couple of 100,000 in like over the 30-year period. So insignificant. And once you realize the decision is indifferent financially, then you can actually relax. And this is exactly what we did. And we're like, okay, well, now what do we feel like emotionally?
Yeah,
because the idea of risk analysis is that you want to get rid of really bad scenarios. Because some decisions, like for example, right now in Belarus and Russia, people are thinking, should I? The country is collapsing. It's dictatorship. It's everything. The laws are closing. Like everything is going really, really down the drain. And so the decision for many families is, should we immigrate? And immigration is a very risky idea. Because you basically you drop your job, you sell your assets, you lose a lot of money, and you have to start basically from scratch in a new country. And especially if you're kids, it's like it's a whole scary decision. But if you've done the risk analysis well, it becomes a no-brainer, because staying is a much bigger risk.
I see.
Regardless of all the risks, of huge risks, like leaving is a huge risk, but staying is so much bigger risk. Then
Okay.
once you do that risk analysis, then you can go, okay, well now I can relax, and yes, we have to accept some of the risks, and maybe we can minimize some of the others. So once you do the math, you discount all the really bad options, and
I
you're
see.
left with
I
a
like
couple
that.
of good options.
I appreciate that explanation. Thank you very much. Yeah, that makes sense. And you know what? It's interesting. That's kind of, my wife and I don't have a spreadsheet, but very similar, right? If she's talking to me about something that we're debating on whether or not to do, my mind almost operates that way. I'll be thinking to myself, okay, I really don't think this is a logical decision, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of a swing left or right, depending on whatever direction happens. So whatever feels good, go for it, honey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, very good. So I want to make sure, I know we're bumping up at a time. I want to make sure you're talking about and highlighting any particular website URLs, etc. So how about the podcast? Do you want to reference that really quick? Make sure people know how to go sign up and where to listen?
Sure. So I have three resources, and we mentioned the first one. Risk Awareness Week started as an annual online conference that runs every October, but because it's 21st century
Yep.
and the technology is so advanced, it really became much more than that. So now it's just kind of this online platform
Okay.
that contains dozens and dozens and dozens of workshops from some of the best, like NASA engineers, Stanford professors, Pentagon military analysts, some of the best thinkers in the science of risk and decision making. And they share the tools and techniques that are applicable to any human being in their personal lives or in their startups or in their companies, whether it's in a small business or government organization or large corporation. It really doesn't matter, because I specifically created the conference to not talk about, kind of hyped topic of the year. Like, we don't really talk about cyber risk. We talk about the math and the techniques behind the cyber risk, because it's the same techniques you actually use for environmental risk.
Okay.
It's the same techniques you use for climate change. It's the same techniques you use for intellectual property or legal risks. Because once you in risk management, there are like 5 techniques. Once you understand the techniques, you can deal with any risk on the planet, like whatever new or sexy the risk is. And so Risk Awareness Week is this global platform of so much knowledge that people can deep dive into different topics and just improve the quality of their decision making,
Okay, very good.
improve how they plan, forecast, and it's really easy to find. It's year.riskawarenessweek.com. So it's like 2019 2020, 2021, 2022, and all the workshops are still there, and most of them are completely free. So
Okay,
you
does
can
it matter what year you put in? If I put in 2023.riskawarenessweek.com, will it come up?
Well, 2023 wouldn't, because I haven't started planning it, because it's October every
Oh, oh,
year.
oh, I
But
see. I see.
but
Okay,
by
now I
June
got you.
there
Okay.
will be 2023.
Okay. All right.
But
Very good.
22, 21, 2019, they're all there, and it's a wonderful resource for people to learn about kind of risk-based planning, budgeting, forecasting,
Very good.
insurance buying, and anything you can think of.
Okay.
The other thing that I recommend people viewing is, I have this blog called Risk Academy, and I mean, you can kind of well, no, yeah, you can kind of call it my podcast, but it's really more a blog, and it has hundreds and hundreds of articles on a lot of different topics on how to improve decision making in business through the lens of risk management. And I publish a lot of guidelines, and again, it's all free. And then the last, and it's really easy to find. It's Risk Academy, one word, .blog.
Risk Academy, one word dot blog. Okay, got it. All right. And then the third?
And the third is the YouTube channel, where I do my webcasts. And in fact, I have one webcast which we do it once a week, or once every 2 weeks sometimes, with a Stanford professor, Sam Savage, who's who's the son of Jimmy Savage, who's like the godfather of modern statistics.
Okay.
And we call it Chance Talk.
Oh, really? All right. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing, because in risk management, it's not really about kind of understanding risks. It's about understanding the chances that your decisions will be successful.
I like that.
It's about understanding the chances, about your business plans being successful, about your budgets being met, about your objectives being met. So, and he calls it chance of whatever, like whatever you have in mind. Like I want to make this much money, or I want to be successful. I want to go to this market by this time. We can calculate the chance of that happening.
Do you bring guests? Do you bring guests on, guest speakers, and what do you do? Or just you and him talking?
It's me and him talking most of the time, but we do bring guests.
Okay.
And if anybody's interested, reach out, and of course we'll invite you. It's kind of it's free for all.
Okay.
We do a live webcast, so
I love it. All right.
People kind of watch live and they ask questions live, and then we respond to the questions. Like we usually have some sort of predetermined agenda, but then we just kind of interact with the participants. So Risk Academy channel on YouTube is probably one of the biggest risk management channels, even though it's a questionable achievement because it's such a narrow niche. But it's pretty big in its niche. It's called Risk Academy, and it's quite easy to find.
Hang on, Alex. Hang on. Alex, congratulations on everything you're doing. I've never met a risk expert that was also a marketing guy and a sales guy, because you are a marketer and a salesman, my friend. Congratulations on everything you've built. You're building a brand for yourself, brand for all your material. Really nice work, man. You're a hustler. I appreciate that. I admire it. Thank you very much for being on the Riderflex show and sharing your story.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. And I hope the listeners enjoyed it.